I am Arnaldo Rosario. I am currently at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina, and I'm a faculty and I'm assistant professor. I started here 5 months ago.
How did you get interested in research in the first place?
So when I was I guess I didn't tell you yet. So when I was an undergrad, so I did my undergrad. So I grew up in Puerto Rico, and then I did my undergrad at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, and it was in industrial biotechnology, thinking that I was gonna go to college and then get a job immediately afterwards, with the degree of industrial biotechnology. And so as I got in, I really, like I don't know, in high school I wasn't sure, but then as I got in, I really, I still loved like the biology of things and chemistry that I was taking and chemical engineering. But in terms of like profession, it wasn't really like something that I could see myself doing. And so on my junior year, I found out about research actually. And so I went into a lab that was looking at immunology, and that was in Puerto Rico. And that was like a nice introduction into a lab setting.
Yeah.
But really what was key was actually a summer experience that I had. So thanks to that, I went to do a summer experience in Brown University. So I spent 2 months there, and there it was like no classes, just research. I was working closely with a postdoc, and we were looking at how microphages, which are like these little Pac-Mans that we have in our cell in our blood that will
Hmm.
respond to bacteria, how the motility of these macrophages can change depending whether mouse in this case have a sepsis or not sepsis and the specific mutation. So that experience was really interesting because I got to do experiments. It was using genetics and doing live imaging and just going to the lab every day. And so
Oh,
that's what I was like,
wow.
okay, I want to continue doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, so could you talk a little bit more about your current research now?
From macrophages, the Pac-Mans of the cells back then, I've been going through different things. So right now, what I'm really interested in is how does the brain turn on? So for the first time during development. So right now, as we're speaking, we are using literally millions of neurons, right? That
Yeah.
are connected to each other in specific ways. But connectivity is not the only thing. They actually fire, right? They're active and they
Hmm.
activate each other, and then you have all these very complex patterns in your brain and on your entire nervous system. So what I'm curious is like at some point, so we know that at some point during development, all the neurons were there, but they were quiet. They were not really firing and talking to each other,
Oh, okay.
right? And then at some point, boom, the brain becomes active, and then you start seeing these patterns of activity. And early on, they don't produce anything significant, like a human embryo or a chick, an embryonic chick, or a fetus of a mouse, or they don't produce anything. The brain is active, they don't produce anything significant. Not until the animal is born or is hatched, if it's a animal that grows in an egg. But it's always before you're born or before the chick is gets out of the egg, always the brains become active at some point. So before you function, before you need your brain, the brain becomes active. And I'm really curious just how that happens. How do you go from completely off to completely on, but not having anything properly done to have a mature functioning system that can produce all the things that we humans and many animals can do?
Yeah, I didn't know that. And when I first read your lab website, I found that fascinating. So, could you talk a little bit more about your methodologies?
Yeah, so normally in biology, like an experimental biologist, you kind of choose a model most of the time. So some people will do experiments in humans, some people will do experiments on mice, which probably you've seen them. Some people do experiments on fruit flies, which is what I use. So fruit flies are very, very powerful because the genetics on the fruit flies are superb. So the experiments that you can do using fly genetics are almost incredible. Like you can think of any part of an animal that you're interested in asking a question. You want to ask what genes are important for that cell, what type of signalings are important in a specific cell, you can answer that. And so the other big advantage that fruit flies have is that you can, for my specific question, is that you can really pinpoint when the brain is going to become active. So today we're actually collecting some embryos where flies are laying their embryos. And tomorrow morning, we come 17 hours later and we can put them under a microscope. And then we can see when the brain was off and now it's on. So we can really capture that moment from in many, many embryos. So that the model is like fruit flies. And then in terms of like techniques that we use in the lab. Basically, we do imaging, so we capture neuronal activity using microscopes. And there are many different ways that you can do that. And one of them is with these sensors. It's like a readout or a proxy for neural activity. So when a neuron fires, there is a lot of calcium that goes into the cell. So people have engineered these sensors that whenever there is high calcium, these sensors grab onto this calcium and then it fluoresces very high, very, very bright. So you can detect
Oh,
that on the so that's the other sort of tools that are really crucial for our experiments.
what's the biggest challenge you face in research?
Uncertainty in research, so a lot of the times it's fun because the thing that is challenging is also what makes it fun.
Yeah.
So when you're doing research, you're kind of entering, by definition, you're entering on the unknown. If we know the answer, then you're not doing research, right? You're just proving something that already we know. So we're entering into this realm of the unknown, and at the same time, it's extremely exciting because you're gonna see something that no other human in the world have ever seen before. And that by itself is exciting. What's challenging sometimes is all the things that need to happen in parallel. So you need to know that you're not gonna find an answer immediately. Like it's gonna be usually years before you find an answer for you were asking that is satisfying. So in these long periods of uncertainty that you don't know whether you're gonna find what you're looking for, you don't know whether you're going to be able to publish this or not. That uncertainty is what I find quite challenging.
What's your favorite part of research?
I guess I just said it. Yeah. So basically
The same
knowing like,
thing?
yeah, like just like seeing something like I remember in grad school, I was looking at how the oocyte, how the eggs develop. It was also in fruit flies. And the way that the experiments work, you see the result immediately. Like right now, I do an experiment with the calcium imaging, and then we analyze that, and then we see a result later. You see the result later. Once in grad school, you dissect, and then in 2 days, once you put the sample under the microscope, you see the result immediately. So that moment of like you seeing at something that nobody else has seen before, like I put a mutation in this specific fruit fly and then look at whether there is a phenotype or not. Yeah, so that moment of knowing that no other humans have ever seen what I'm seeing now, that to me is the most exciting part of science and research in general.
And you talked a lot about pushing this field forward. Where do you see your like research topic and your field going to the future? And where do you think students should put their attention to?
Good question. So there are, I guess, depending on how you define my field, but I guess in neuroscience, I will argue that we still don't know. I mean, we know so little in neuroscience that I feel like pretty much anywhere that you go is a safe place as long as you're really interested about it and you're passionate about it. The one thing this is a little bit more technical, but it is important, is that a lot of the fields are moving towards like being dependent on computing and coding skills and
Yeah,
being able
technology.
to being able to be familiar with different types of computing softwares and machine learning type of thing. So I think that knowing how to really maximize the use of a computer for your research, I think that's something that I will tell the students to pick up as soon as they can. So it becomes like it becomes nature to like being able to interact with different types of tools that will be for sure. And this all comes with basically large data. So a lot of the science is moving towards large data in different fields. In my case, it's like we record for like 6 hours a movie, so you end up with a gigantic file so we take like every second we take a picture, so we end up with like thousands of different individual snapshots. In each snapshot, there are like 40 embryos, and then you want to extract signal from this and meaning from this. So that is a very computational problem. Always the same in that you need that. But yeah, so that's what I will say. And I guess in terms of biological questions, I really think that understanding how the brain develops is still a huge question that we haven't answered, and we
So
know a
like
lot.
basic science? Oh,
Yeah, that I mean, I'm actually biased. Yeah, because that's what
yeah.
I do. But that's definitely there's a lot of area there for growth. You don't have to be a researcher, basic science, but having some background in basic science, I think it will help you doing a lot later, wherever you go, like having this mentality of a scientist and how to tackle different problems. I know it can help you later in other problems like that, or you will encounter in different professions.
Yeah, most definitely. Adding to that, if you were to hire like a high school student in your lab, what type of traits are you looking for? Like, what do you think defines a great researcher?
I think anyone can be a great researcher, especially when you're young, because you change. I think that to me the at that age the key is just the interest, being very, very curious about what are the question that you're specifically asking.
How do you suggest high schoolers find their passion? Like, how did you find your own passion?
Yeah, try different things. Try as soon as you can. Just keep if like research specifically, try like you're doing, try a C elegant research in I don't know specifically your question that you were asking, but and then try a fly lab asking a different question, or try a C elegant lab but asking also like a different question. Yeah, just trying things, and then if there is something that you're really curious and you want to keep going and answering the question and doing the experiments, then you kind of stay there. Yeah.
Would you suggest high schoolers for their major? Like, should they keep research in mind, or do you think it's good to venture off and pursue something that you're interested in? And then your background, what different perspectives have it has it brought you?
I didn't do a plan. Like it's not like I knew I wanted to do research when I was in high school, but I was gonna do industrial biotechnology to have that mentality, right? I end up in this path just by accident. So it's hard to tell you like if you like research, don't do research, do this else,
Hmm.
and then do research because then you have a different view, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Industrial biotechnology, do you think you have a different view on research? And do you think that helps you in like a positive way?
Yeah, I think so. Industrial technology, I know it's an uncommon degree, but basically it does a lot of basically chemical engineering with microbiology in terms of classes and training.
Oh,
So
okay.
I do see how, yeah, I do see how like sometimes I have a sort of engineering mentality and like it always needs to add up. Like if you put this thing in, it needs to go somewhere, either in energy or mass or whatever. So that type of mentality of engineering, I think has definitely helped me because not everyone has that if they have taken biology throughout their career. But I guess yes, if you can, yeah, if you can go to a college where you can do some research but get an engineering degree but do biology research, like yeah, that's perfect. Like you have two different worlds at the same time. But like if you know you're gonna do research, do research. The degree, yeah, that depends, but definitely, and you can do research, doesn't matter what degree you're taking, right?
Yeah. And then last question for today. Is there any other advice you give high schoolers looking to pursue research in the future?
You can start. So I know you said like, sometimes in high school it's hard to find, but like I guess if once you start in college, try to find a lab that as soon as you can, because the chances
Yeah.
are you're not gonna like a lab or like not about liking, it's not gonna be a good fit for you. So then you can, okay, I don't like this, and then you go to another lab. And then so it would be ideal if you can spend like several years in the same lab when you are in college
Yeah.
if you want to continue the research path, like if you want to do once you graduate from undergrad, you want to do a PhD, it will help if you have 1 or 2 years in the same lab as an undergrad.
So consistency is the big thing that we should focus on.
Yes, exactly. Because having multiple, like let's say you join a lab in your junior year, right? And then you spend there 1 semester, you don't like it, and then you switch. Spend 1 semester, you don't like it, and then you go to another one and you spend 1 year on that one. So like having fragmented is good in a way that you learn, but research takes time. And so like, it's not enough time to like produce something substantial that is both satisfying to you as a researcher, but also like satisfying when you're going to apply for grad school.
Yeah.
It's always people see with positive eyes when a person has spent a lot of time in one single lab.
Thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time.